Mike's pretty skeptical, but actually, we both got weirded out by something that mentioned literally heartbeats happening in the Galactic Federation of Worlds like 2 weeks before this. That's the remote viewing guys. I know I keep bringing them up, but they just keep weirding me the hell out.
The Exiled Minds Podcast, famously Martin. You have like several names that you're famous and the mighty. How can we beat that? The Exiled Minds Podcast. The Exiled Minds Podcast, famously Martin, the mighty Rohan, famous Exiled Minds Podcast. How can you beat that?
What's interesting about this is with all the turmoil going on in 2020 and with the Tom DeLonge thing, this narrative that's starting to develop, lots of propaganda, all the kind of pieces are starting to fall into place. There's lots of like what to believe, you don't know. Balthazar, there's all this stuff going on. It's like, what do you believe? What do you believe? If you look at our elites, they're acting freaking weird. They're definitely like meeting behind closed door, like they have their plans. And I wonder, do the elites, have they gotten a list of demands from these beings? The Galactic Federation of Worlds, are we in it? Are we not in it? Is this real? If it is, like, are we trying to get into it? And maybe these are getting this laundry list of demands. Or you need to have more control, centralized government, you can't have guns. A lot of the elite's behavior right now is just almost like desperate.
He claims there is a galactic federation, a group of advanced extraterrestrial beings called the Galactic Federation. The Galactic Federation, there is a Galactic Federation.
Well, hello, and welcome to the show, Exiled Minds Podcast, with your host, the famous Liam Martin, on Thursday, 6th of July, 2023. Nice to see you. Hope you've had a nice week so far. A bit late on this one. I was trying to help a friend out earlier in Dire Straits, so I thought I'm going to have to push it back. And then when I did come to start an hour late, I forgot to press the fucking button to go live. So I've just done the show, and it was amazing, but you weren't there, so we're doing it again. It's brilliant. It's the best one ever. Isn't that just the way? Whew. Anyway, we're back. The show must go on. We're sticking to the radio clock, and and here we are for part 2 of the UFOs and Aliens show. We've had to do part 2 because, as I mentioned yesterday, it gets a little bit. With just an hour, it's not really enough time to cover some of these things because they get complicated and they sprawl out a lot. But today, we had a quick look at the Roswell stuff and how they announced it and then changed their mind, said it was a weather balloon, and that's where that comes from. And this idea that it could have been, they did study it at the time, but then they want to shut the information down, but we can't find out if this group really exists, this Majestic 12 group. And then, we looked at what the psychology people were saying, kind of leaning towards us, kind of delusion. It's kind of closing up the topic, and it's always been, it's tinfoil hat stuff all these years. Been telling us that, haven't they? Oh, it's just crazy. I don't believe that stuff. But then, not so crazy. Not so crazy because now the US military are talking about UFOs. And remember as I like to say, they denied that Area 51 existed for ages. Even though you could climb up the mountain and look at it. And even though you had Russian, like, aerial satellite photos. And they're saying, no, it's not there, you know? So, I mean, but then they admitted that it was there. So we know lies happen. Anyway, UFOs. So this is how we're going to do it then. Just like yesterday, we'll go on a fantastic voyage. We'll have a captivating journey and we'll explore the mysteries beyond our planet. And we'll dive into these compelling encounters. We've done some of the mind-boggling sightings. And I don't know if you check the Betty and Barney Hill recordings when they had hypnosis. I mean, hypnosis has got its thing. Can you have suggestibility in there? But they were terrified. And they were the first abduction ever like officially reported. And they were a mixed race couple as well in the early 60s. So they could have been facing their own prejudice. You might want to keep a low profile. And not, they were terrified. So I don't know. So we looked at that and we looked at psychology saying, you know, it might just be consuming too much, wild imagination, you're more prone to delusion if you believe these things. But then these days, you know, they're talking about it. Congress UFO reports saying, you know, give us the stuff. And then they've changed the name from UFO to UAP in recent years, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP. And so when they've brought out the documents, oh, we'll give you the stuff that we have for UFOs then. They've only took it back to, about 2008 when they started calling them UAPs. And we're like, no. Where's all the old stuff? And they're making out, we've got nothing about this, you know, from before. And we're like, yes, we know you have. They're playing coy. We know you called them UFOs then. You know what we're talking about. And we know you had a Project Blue Book, whole project to look into it back at the time. You know, and probably this MJ12 people to lock it all down. So anyway, we're going to have a look at that today. Go for a bit more of the history and see where we've got with the UFOs and the aliens. And like I say, we'll go on a bit of a thrilling extraterrestrial adventure. Right then. So, starting with historicmysteries.com. We're going to have a quick look at this MJ12 thing then. So, who are MJ12? Majestic 12, also known as MJ12, is a highly secretive and mysterious organization that has long been the subject of conspiracy theories and speculation. Said to have been established by US President Harry Truman in the wake of the infamous Roswell incident in 1947, MJ12 is rumored to be a shadowy group of government officials and scientists tasked with investigating and concealing the truth about extraterrestrial life. Evidence of the existence of this organization has remained elusive over the years, and of course, there have been no official confirmation. So the question to be asked then, is MJ12 extremely well hidden or nothing? So I can't find it because it's not there, a bit like the missing link. Just my opinion. I'm entitled to it. So, who's seen them? This is what makes MJ12 so secret. Despite their existence having been leaked over 30 years ago, none of the members of MJ12 have ever been spotted in public. Aliens themselves are a more common sight. The possibility of a group's existence entered the public knowledge May 31st, 1987, when British ufologist Timothy Good claimed he possesses a batch of 1950s-era UFO documents. These documents revealed a secret group of 12 that had been formed in 1947. The documents detailed how the government had covered up the Roswell crash in July 1947 and how the US had engaged with aliens ever since. It was claimed that these documents had first been discovered in 1984 when another ufologist, James Sindera, received an envelope containing film that showed photographs of government briefing papers that described Operation Majestic 12. Throughout the 1980s, leading ufologists claimed to find more and more evidence of MJ12's existence. Much of the testimony in support of the existence of MJ12 comes from eyewitnesses who refer to mysterious and unidentified government representatives who appear after alien encounters, like the Men in Black type thing. These men, dressed in black suits, hence Men in Black, that is the rumor has morphed into the popular entertainment, seeks to restrain the information and control evidence. But as we'll see, the Men in Black might be a slightly different thing, or just kind of part of it. But Shandera, Stanton T. Friedman, and Bill Moore claim they have received a series of mysterious messages that led them to the declassified files section of the National Archives. In these archives, they found the Cutler and Twinning memo, Cutler and Twining memo, supposedly written by President Eisenhower's assistant, Robert Cutler, to General Twining, contains a reference to Majestic 12. One of the big problems with the Majestic 12 conspiracy, one of the big problems is that it's a little vague. Lots of people claim to have been visited or abducted or have the mind wiped by the Men in Black, but none seem to have officially interacted with MJ12. They're too secretive. So this is the thing I was saying about, like, with the X-Files in the show yesterday, in part 1 of the Aliens and UFOs show. Yeah. In X-Files, that's who the shadowy government was supposed to be. It's supposed to be these MJ12 people. Okay, so that's one side of things. But national security interests are going to want to put... Look, you're mandated as military forces and national security to, protect your country, right? And if there's something like UFOs and coming in at, tens of thousands of miles an hour, you can't do anything about it. And if some of this stuff's true, some of the abilities, then you're going to fail at your job as national security, and you can't really admit that. You can't really say that. Do you know what I'm saying? And you've really got to. They're mandated to be able to protect. They've got to deny it, and then if it's a threat, and it's all such a kind of worms, because then if it's true and you get crash retrievals, people's going to want the technology for energy because they're not driving around with petrol, are they? So it gets a bit messy, and then But as we'll go on. So that's Majestic 12 in the beginning, potentially covering it up. But if they're not covering it up, somebody else is going to be. And at least they lied about Area 51 when we could see it. What's that over there? Nothing. It's just it's a mirage. I'm looking at it. And why have you got trucks on there and snipers aimed at me if it's nothing? Just saying. But anywho, moving on. Stephen Greer. A lot to be said about Stephen Greer. Some like him, some don't. But who is he? Former pediatrician, an American ufologist. Kind of gave up the doctor stuff to study. He set up the study of extraterrestrial intelligence and the Disclosure Project. The CSETI was, he founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, CSETI. So this is a guy who's received a BS degree, a Bachelor's of Science degree in biology in 1982, and MD degree in 87. So the doctor since 87, but then in 1990, that's when he set up CSETA, and then went on in 93. He founded the Disclosure Project, where the goal was to publicly disclose the government's alleged knowledge of UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and advanced energy and propulsion systems. Greer described the Disclosure Project as an effort to grant amnesty to government whistleblowers willing to violate their security oaths by sharing classified information about UFOs. Greer claims to have been briefed by CIA Director James Woolsey at a dinner party, although Woolsey disputes the accuracy of Greer's claim. So, the deal is Stephen Greer is a guy that got a load of military whistleblowers, radar guys, pilots, all kind of stuff, men and women, all as many sort of official witnesses as you could get with credentials, and where they could demonstrate they've been in the military or whether So I wanted to get professionals that that would normally be acceptable witnesses in a court of law. Made it kind of like a bit of a press conference, and they'll all give this testimony like it's kind of court thing, and do it all on record. And then ever since, they've been pushing for the discussion on the UFOs and the alien stuff. As I mentioned yesterday, it's for all this time, it's been, it's tinfoil hat stuff, you're all crazy. And the psychology side of people will be like, if you talk about this stuff, we're probably going to get a diagnosis. But then turns out, no, we're allowed to talk about it. So, okay. So here we are then. So here we are talking about it. So that was Stephen Greer. You'll see him if you ever get into this stuff, because there's like the big names. It's like 2 tier in it, you get mainstream media and alternative media. You still got a kind of levels of things. But anyway, so that was Stephen Greer, who pushed for the Disclosure Project, and this is one of the first people I came across as well in Crazy Land. Some of the weirdness of this stuff. We got Phil Schneider, and the Phil Schneider situation. He was basically he was a geologist with government clearance, and the story goes that you'll find him all over the internet, but this one happens to be from the howandwise.com. And yes, right up on Phil Schneider. Phil Schneider's suspicious death, battle with Greys at Dulce Base, and alien agenda. So the story with this guy goes, Phil Schneider, this guy was doing speaking tours. He said he was a geologist, worked for government. The government contracted him. They pulled him in to work on some drills because they kept getting busted up. The drill heads were getting busted up. They was working on some underground military base, building this base. Drill heads kept coming up, mashed up. So they sent this geologist in to go and check it out. And the idea is that he goes down a kind of mine shaft and a little lift, and because it's a government facility that they're building, there's got military there. So he says you've got beret level, commando sort of level troops there, both US and NATO guys there. And he goes down with some US Marine type, some beret. And and they've accidentally broken into a cavern with some aliens in there. And the deal was that this is how it works, compartmentalization in government. Some department knows about aliens and is working with them and has let them have a base there. Another department is building a base nearby, don't realize they're there, cracks into the alien base. So the aliens are annoyed. What the hell? We got permission. What are you doing here? You're not supposed to know about us. Do you know what I'm saying? And we freak out. So it ends up a bit of a scrap, a bit of a fight happens. So that is the story. And the thing about Phil Schneider is that he tells that story. He's got some unusual injuries. A couple of fingers missing and stuff, and arthritis, and he says his bones are burnt. He's got a scar on his chest where he says he got hit with this alien beam. This alien shot out of his chest. So I don't know. He says the other soldier shoved him on this lift and sent it up, sort of saved him. Sacrificed himself. An alien came up to try and negotiate, but because it was a pressurized area, they had to pressurize it for the alien or something, and someone went in with a sidearm because it was a pressurized room. It made a bullet go off, and then the alien thought it was under attack, and the fight started again. So he claims, dozens of people died that day. I mean, is it 66? Was it? Let's have a quick look in this to see how many. Yeah, so Phil Schneider, supposedly a geologist, goes down, has this gets this bizarre attack, gets thrown into this meat grinder situation. So he claims a bunch of people died, and it's just because compartmentalization. But then he had materials as well. He had some stuff that is supposed to be alien material that you can prove and whatnot. When he died in an unusual way, that it was it was called as a suicide by the coroners. But Phil Schneider was found with a tourniquet wrapped around his neck, and they're saying he couldn't physically have done it. His arthritis, he had missing fingers. It was done with rubber, I think, as well. It was hard to do, and it was crawled halfway under his bed when he found it. And the material he had that was supposed to be extraterrestrial had gone missing. So it all looks a bit suspicious, but it's a wild story, right? And I totally get that. It is a wild story, the Phil Schneider stuff. But if any of this stuff's, if aliens are a thing, then what's not wild? What is wild? And if government lies happen, it's not conspiracy anymore, is it? We're talking about it. UFOs now. And the thing, in fact, you can take pictures of them yourself. They're all in infrared. And they move fast. So you need a fast shutter speed and to be filming in infrared, or put a red and blue filter in front of your camera and just hope that it's going to compensate enough. But if you've got 120 if you've got 120 on your camera and you've got infrared, you're laughing, you'll get them. Just take videos, little 10-minute sections so you can slow them down. Which we'll get to later in August. We're getting Farsight, the remote viewers on. Hopefully Courtney Brown's going to come on, director of the Farsight Institute. I'll do an interview. I'll have a good chit chat about that. the remote viewing stuff, and really get into the alien thing then. This is part of the reason why I wanted to make sure we covered some of it, prefacing for that. So yeah, beginning of August that should be, hopefully. Anyway, moving on from one crazy story, let's go for another one then. Dan Burish, otherwise known as Dan Crane, changed his name, Dan Crane. So this is from a website, etarena.org, but you should find a bit of Dan Burish all over the place. I originally saw him, did an interview on a Project Camelot on YouTube, which was, I think, a few years after YouTube had started. And that was Kerry Cassidy and Bill Ryan. I thought he seemed quite truthful. It's saying here in the article, and I thought he did personally as well. So according to this is the introduction. Before reading further, it's recommended you get familiar with William Hamilton. So shall we do it? William Hamilton. We're talking Bill Hamilton. William Hamilton and Bill Cooper. Okay, so William Hamilton is a former program analyst, MUFON guy. Okay, that's Mutual Network, UFO Network, field investigator since of the phenomenon since 1976. Okay, so Bill Hamilton, who is part of the US group for investigating these UFOs independently, the MUFON group. He thinks this guy's legit, Dan Burish. Dan Burish, it seemed some of the detailing of how the protocols work seemed legit to me. And there was another bit which I want to make a point of saying that make him seem like a stand-up guy as well. So, what's the story? Dan Burish, formerly known as Dan Crane, changed his name in 1995. Graduated in the University of Nevada, got his PhD, State University of New York. In 2006, Dan stated he is a microbiologist involved in the Lotus Project. Retired from Majestic 12, which was it was formerly a member of for 20 years. So supposedly he was in this, Majestic 12 group that's there looking at the alien situation. So he said it's 20 years, and he said he joined in 1986. So I don't know if this Majestic 12, is it later, is it earlier? I don't know. Because it looks, before this went further back, who are they? Don't know. But this guy claims he was in it for a while. So he worked up. So this Dan Burish guy, basically, his deal is that he said he worked on one of these underground military bases, and they're called DUMBs, deep underground military bases. They're all over America, But this guy said he worked on one and is a bit disobedient. Due to Dan's disobedience, he wrote a book, Eagles Disobey, the case for Inca City, Mars, and apparently he got him in a lot of trouble. And so, but there's a few interesting things about this guy. The Lotus Project's creepy and a bit weird, which we're going to have to do a different show on that. He also says something unusual about Men in Blacks, and he says that he got to meet an alien that they call J-Rods. Now his deal was that Dan Burish, so the story goes, microbiologist, okay, his deal is he's got to work directly with the alien, take samples. So he's got a suit and an airline. You go into an isolated room. You've got to take your airline off, swap it over, get it sterilized. Go in, take a sample, put it in a vacuum sealed tube, go to the wall, put it in one of them vacuum sealed tube things. It shoots off to a lab. Then he goes back into the quarantine room, gets sterilized, takes the airline off, goes into another room, another airline, gets sterilized, takes stuff off. He said the room had chimneys in it, big chutes, basically exhaust vents all around. So if anything goes wrong, they could just incinerate the crap out of it. And that was the deal. And he basically said he helped it to escape in the end. Got all kinds of material and information from it. And in the end, he just helped it to escape, apparently. And then he got messed with a lot as well for it. So he's an interesting character. It's definitely worth a read. But we're coming up to the break times, radio clock stuff. So what we'll do is we'll have a quick break, a little bit of music, and then maybe we'll just do a bit more on Dan Burish, and then we'll move on to a couple of other interesting characters in this whistleblower UFO situation. So we'll get some new music on, and we'll catch you in just a couple of minutes on the Exiled Minds Podcast. Me, Liam Martin. Welcome back to the show, folks. Welcome back to the Exiled Minds Podcast with your incredibly famous and dashing host, Liam Martin. Yeah, talking about aliens and UFOs today. Trying to talk about some of the weird stuff, some of the ways, well, some of the organizations that's trying to hide it, why they might want to hide it. Obviously, it's, you know, the power systems is one thing. Energy systems have not moved on in, what, a century? You know? Come on. And they're not going around using crude oil, are they? Not got gasoline or petrol, diesel. You know what I'm saying? If you've got crash retrievals and you figure out the tech, the energy, come on. It's a business killer. Famously, Nikola Tesla. You know, he was wirelessly transmitting electric. Yeah. And he was afraid that, oh no, if you could transmit electricity, how do you put a meter on it? That was the famous quote. And, you know, it might hurt the timber industry. But anyway, yeah, so whistleblower Dan Burish. Let's have another look. So he's the guy that supposedly helped an alien escape. It's a really fascinating story when I sort of read into it. Say the Lotus project that originally was talking about, that was some magnetic anomaly that basically went to investigate, and it seemingly was making these kind of micro wormholes or something, but it was doing a creepy thing where if there was any organic matter nearby, it would sort of like not reanimate it like zombie stuff, but it would like recombine it and make it start to come alive. There was some anomaly, and it was like, I don't know what it did with it, and it was firing radio waves into it or whatever, but it ended up recombining some matter in the area to start to grow a bit of a neuro pathway, like a brain. So they stopped it, don't know what that is. So that's a bit of a creepy thing. I have to look into that on a separate show. And also he talked about how they had this chronovisor like way to potentially see the future. Okay. And the way it was designed is almost like a ball in the middle. So it sounds a bit like on the movie Contact. If there's the book Contact, they did a movie about it. And basically, it's a Carl Sagan book. And yeah, Jodie Foster was famous in the movie, and it looks a bit like The Machine. In Contact, a little bit. It's kind of like the gyroscope like rings with like a bit of a ball in the middle, if I remember him describing it like that. Almost like they're making a mechanical pineal gland. It's supposed to have water in it, and you're seeing inside there. So I don't know. But that's what Dan Burris had said anyway. They had a sort of chronovisor machine, but they called it the Looking Glass. And I thought that's interesting. If you watch Lost, TV show, AMC TV show came out subsequently after this, the Dharma Project, the Looking Glass, and that was the water station. And the Looking Glass technology here from Dan Burris said that was supposed to be like water in the middle, a bit like a pineal gland. And it's the Dharma Project, and he started with the Lotus Project. It's almost like, is it seeded in sci-fi or what? Or did it just get inspired, or is it unrelated? Funny one. But anyway, Dan Burris, yeah. The other interesting thing about Dan Burris that said about Men in Blacks that I mentioned is that he talked about how Men in Black, well, he's supposed to have done this stuff, helped an alien escape and whatnot, and supposedly there's some talk about his wife was sort of like his handler and whatnot, and he kind of got locked down and tried to mind wipe him, but they still needed him to work. They're going to get rid of him. Still need him for the project, too valuable, but messed him up a bit. So they had to kind of like undo it, sort of give him his memories back. It's a bit too disobedient, but they want to, get rid of him. So I don't know. So he's kind of disappeared. But the thing I wanted to say, so William Hamilton, instead of the start of this article, kind of rates this guy and says he seems legit. The protocol it explained and stuff, that seemed kind of a bit legit to me. But also, when he was doing the speaking tours, when he was on YouTube doing the thing, it didn't kind of go along to get along. He said his own thing. And there was one time when somebody stood up and made one of those sweeping statements, which is always a bad move. Was like, somebody got up at one time and was like, all vaccines have got mercury, so that and it's all bad. And he's a microbiologist, and he was like, no. He stood up, and he went against the panel because everyone was kind of go along to get along. And he stood up and said, no, it's complicated. And he's a microbiologist, and he was like, no, I'm doing this stuff. I worked on aliens, man. I know what I'm talking about. He says, don't just stop giving kids the shots and this, that, and the other, because there's diseases to consider and stuff. It's not, you can't just make sweeping statements, just know nothing, that's it. And he stood up against him, actually, on a place like that's invited him, some big do, like Contact in the Deserts, whatever. And, they've invited the guy to be a keynote speaker. And right at the end, he like stood against him a bit. But that was his, as his belief and his word, like people, not qualified people, making statements that could get people hurt. So I thought, I don't know my stuff on all that stuff. And I got an autoimmune disease, so I'm a bit cautious with it and suspicious of a lot of stuff anyway, for good reason. But I thought that was good of him to stand up, even if you can be on opposite sides of the fence and still be, grateful for people and big them up on the respect and the integrity. I think that's important. I thought, give him a shout out on that one. and say Eagles Disobey. This is the book there, Dan Burrush. So check him out. Links in the description. Next person I want to look at. Another weird, crazy story. Again, another whistleblower, another government guy, allegedly. But this, it was in there. This was a guy military, but then do you know if his story is true? But this is a book by William Tompkins, and one of the editors is Nick Redfern, who's wrote a lot of books on the UFO stuff, but he's helped him get it out. But yeah, William Tompkins wrote a book, Selected by Extraterrestrials, My Life in Top Secret World of UFOs, Think Tanks and Nordic Secretaries. So the deal is, William Tompkins was embedded into the world of secrecy as a teenager when the Navy took an interest in his personal ship models, and they took them out of Hollywood department stores because it had the correct radar and gun placements, and they're saying that's supposed to be classified where we would place them on the ship. So he said we talked about the Battle of LA yesterday, when there's a UFO blatantly came over and it shot thousands of rounds of ammo at this UFO, and allegedly one of the Nordic craft, he's saying there was Nordic craft at the Battle of LA, may have selected him to be a representative in the evolving aerospace race. The book is a partial autobiography about his life in the beginning of the 70s, including some of his early work for TRW. Selected by the Navy prior to completing high school to be authorized to research his work, he regularly visited classified naval facilities during World War II until he was discharged in 1946. After working in North American aviation and North Drop, he was hired by Douglas Aircraft Company in 1950, where he was found that when they found out about his involvement with the classified work, they wanted to give him a job to create, new design solutions as a draftsman. Okay, and have a peripheral think tank working under him. So this was the idea, that this guy is gonna make the latest stuff. So later he became involved in conventional aspects of the Saturn rocket program, and later became the Apollo launch vehicle. His insight into system engineering resulted in his offering some critical suggestions personally to Werner von Braun. So he had the credibility. But this guy's Tompkins is saying that basically they made craft like a secret space program, and there were these big cigar-shaped craft, and let's have a look. A little bit of a write-up for him. Yeah, so William Tompkins, he said he was involved in the construction of advanced spacecraft during his career for the United States Navy in collaboration with extraterrestrial beings. All right. And he said, they incorporated anti-gravity and other advanced propulsion systems that were utilized by the military. He offered that selected by extraterrestrials, but also offered Selected by Extraterrestrials Volume 2, My Life in the Top Secret World of UFOs, German Flying Saucers, and the US Navy's Secret Space Program, where he details his experiences and interactions with alleged extraterrestrial beings from the perspective of, classified stuff. Yeah, and he was talking about these cigar-shaped crafts, and he pointed, or it was at the same time, which is kind of strange, but I remember around this time when I was looking into this guy, is this book came out, when this book came out? Let's have a look. Was it 2017? Okay, yeah, so around that sort of time, 2017, 2018, I remember there's an article that came out, and it caused a bit of a stir, where it was an aerospace article about these America's got these cigar-shaped craft that are using this, revolutionary new propulsion system. It was quite simple, like a big turbine, but it had some special thing going on, and they were massive, and they're going to start using them like airships instead of airplanes. But then this article kind of got pulled down, and it sort of all disappeared. But it was telling you about how they work and stuff. And it was the same way that William Mills Tompkins, Selected by Extraterrestrials, it's the same way that he described that they were working. And I thought, is it weird? It's all messing about, or what? Or did it nearly get out then? I wondered about that. So it could be worth going on a backtrack and going checking that out again. Next one, another guy, same sort of position, working for the military, working in government stuff. You've got the Rainmakers of Saturn, by Norman R. Berggren. So this is basically, there's 45 plates of photographs in this book taken on the Voyager 1 flight to Saturn in 1980. The reader of this remarkable book sees that one of the photographs shows the A-ring is incomplete, and the author sets out to explain this phenomenon in an understandable form. This guy's basically saying that, okay, so Norman Berggren, this guy's saying that those rings on Saturn, they're right. In his book, The Ringmakers of Saturn, he's saying that, so this come out in 86. It's The Ringmakers of Saturn, a Pentagon alien UFO cover-up. And he says there's something having to create those rings. He suggests the large cylindrical objects he refers to as ring makers responsible creating and maintaining the rings of Saturn. Berggren speculates that these objects are actually extraterrestrial spacecraft or living entities. He also proposes that there's been a cover-up by the Pentagon and other government agencies regarding the existence of these ring makers and their connection to extraterrestrial intelligence. He urges that his analysis of NASA's Voyager mission images and other data supports his conclusions. So that's the deal with the ring makers of Saturn. And if on Amazon here it's £50, it used to be $500. But yeah, if you look on Abe Books, it's £800. It's often a very expensive book, The Ringmakers of Saturn, for some weird reason, which I find suspicious in itself. Even though, if you really look, you can find it out there as a PDF for free. So why is it? How many books have you seen that are $800 that are still readily available? Weird, but anywho. Okay, next one, another kind of whistleblower type. Again, more modern one this time. This is from 2020, December the 8th, 2020. And this is from NBCnews.com. Former Israeli Space Secretary Chief... sorry, let me say that again. Former Israeli Space Security Chief says extraterrestrials exist and Donald Trump knows about it. I don't know why the Trump bit has to be in there, but, you know. A galactic federation, just like on my track. A galactic federation has been waiting for humans to reach the stage where we will understand space and what spaceships are. A former Israeli Space Secretary Chief has set eyebrows shooting heavenwards by saying that Earthlings have been in contact with extraterrestrials from a galactic federation. Okay, that's what he's saying. His name's Haim Ashad, the former head of Israeli Defense Ministry Space. So space Ministry of Defense. So he told Israel newspaper that in an interview that ran in Hebrew, and then parts of it got published in English in the Jerusalem Post. So it went a bit viral. A respected professor and retired general, Ashad, said the aliens were equally curious about humanity and were seeking to understand the fabric of the universe. Ashad said cooperation agreements had been signed between species, including an underground base in the depths of Mars, where there are American astronauts and alien representatives. So we're saying there's a base on Mars, with US people there, right? And that's what Dan Burish said. If we go back to Dan Burish, put his picture up again. And that's what he said. So I'm bring back to him. And then, so they're going to wonder, what? Is this taxpayer money then? Where's the money coming from? This taxpayer money being spent on us and not telling us about it? Right, and Dan Burish said this as well. And then Dan Burish also said about the Men in Black stuff as well, because that's a bit of a weird one with the Men in Black thing. What is that? You know, because there is, was it sodium pentothal that you can give to people to wipe the memories? That's just sticking with a needle. It's classic, you know. So I don't, you know, you got to think. What is this? And this guy had a creepy one that did I mention this about the Men in Black? Because I did the show and then forgot to press live, didn't I? Do it again. So I'm not sure if I said, but this guy told of a weird Men in Black situation where, because he gets followed a lot, supposedly, according to his story, you had to watch out for him. But he says some of them are like aliens and they can't walk properly. You can sort of tell by the way they walk, not very natural. And he said one of them was following him. And it said it saw a swing set and it sat in the swing and just started going on the swing. And he said the reason is because some of these alien ones, they're wearing human skin on top to look more human. Somehow blend it with their own, but then the epigenetics and the chemical memory, they can get the human skin memory of the person that used to own it. So they'll be on the swing going, swing. Like, what? Man, that sounds well creepy, doesn't it? Well creepy. What the hell? We're in human skin over here and they get lost in the human skin memory. That's bad. But then, you know, this big boy pants stuff. This is why people don't want to talk about this thing, because somebody can get scared the way you go. You talk about cattle mutilations, talk about abductions. It's not much of a leap to say, did they hurt people? Did they chop people up? Did they eat them? Well, maybe that's why they don't want to tell folk. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But so, yeah, some strange stories of whistleblowers, Israel from the US, and Ben Rich. Ben Rich, it was a former director. There's a famous quote saying, "We've got the technology to take ET home." It's not quite like that, but there's a guy called Ben Rich, who's the former director of Lockheed Skunk Works, top aerospace industry people, and the Skunk Works department kind of gets linked into Black Ops because they do the latest stuff. You know, whoever can make the latest cool stuff, you know, the background military is going to want it first till they've got something better before the public know about it, obviously. So your enemies don't get your best stuff. But Ben Rich, when he retired from Lockheed Skunk Works, he is reportedly said, but it's kind of not in front of the cameras and public, you know, to someone in private, but supposedly he said, "We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects and it would take an act of God to ever get the benefit out to humanity." So, you know, that was the famous Ben Rich quote. So what is it? Because there's a lot of money to be made in this stuff. You know, not a secrecy to be had and power and things like this. And if there's another tier of technology and, you know, energy systems, why we got an energy crisis? It can't move forward with energy systems. So, you know, and if there is these fancy technologies, technology builds in technology and it gets better and better. So you've got to consider it's like it can become a runaway civilization situation. So you get a separate, you know, rich business people and, you know, military types having much better technology than us. And they're like a separate civilization then, you know, if they go around in space all in secret. Do you know what I'm saying? It's, you know, it's not cool. It's not cool. And plus they've done it on our money. And they could be using it to, for so many things. But anyways, this is why it annoys me, because you've got the War of the Worlds, which was used. I mean, even Forrestal. Let's look at this Forrestal, because look, even in the history, you've got to look at the history. This guy, James Vincent Forrestal, was cabinet level U.S. Senate. The United States Secretary for the Navy, the Secretary of Defense. It's thought that this guy was going to go public with it all because he knew the importance of it. This guy, he was assassinated. He's known to have been murdered. I think he's pushed him off a balcony. Do you know what I'm saying? So they'll bump people off. And if you remember, we did the Antarctica episode. We talked about Admiral Byrd again, another most decorated Navy admiral in US history. He said some weird stuff. Now, some of it becomes a bit legend, you know, his notebook. He's supposed to float inside the earth, whatever. But the remote viewers, Farsight, who mention a lot, they're going to be coming in August on the show because I have a real good talk about this stuff. But, you know, remote viewing, it works. It works. It's been tested a lot for decades. It works. They've been doing it independently for decades. I've tried it. It works. You try it. So they looked to the end of the Second World War, Operation High Jump, just to recap, and Admiral Byrd, they got wiped. They took a flotilla of 16 ships, oil tankers, supply ships, all sorts, aircraft carriers, supposedly to set up an airstrip. But no, they was trying to take out the last Nazi base. Got their asses kicked because UFOs coming out of the water and stuff. They thought the Nazis had some borrowed UFOs, kicked the butt to make it look like the Nazis were really tough, and they're going to come and take over to scare the US into making deals with aliens. And that's why they're talking about aliens deals has been made. You know, deals, backdoor, like politics, man, space politics. So that's why we have to know about this stuff, because these deals, we're the commodities in all of this, aren't we? We need to be knowing about this stuff, take a charge of it, especially with the energy systems, because it's just, anyway, getting sold down the river on this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, we've got, whether or not Majestic 12 is a secret organization trying to hide this, don't matter. We know the lab our stuff. Area 51 is your case in point. For decades, it's like, no, there's nothing over there. Don't look behind the curtain. Come on. And now, let's say, we'll get Farsight Institute on, because they do remote viewing. They just wanted to find out if aliens was a thing. And it just escalated. And just, there's more and more start finding stuff out. So, and you can do it yourself. And now they've developed a way, somebody contacted them, some radar technician or something, and some people have done this before, where you figured out you can use infrared and you can capture some of these things because they're all in infrared. So that's why I mentioned frame rate on your camera, 120 infrared, 4K. If you've got a decent camera that does that, you definitely go and get it. So, you know, all of this, if you look into this UFO stuff, if you get night vision goggles, that will do it as well. I think they've got to be 4th generation or above. So then they're not cheap. And if you shine night vision goggles, if you let light blight go into them, it can burn them out. So you've got to be careful your night vision goggles. But yeah, 4th, 5th generation night vision goggles should let you see stuff. But infrared cameras for sure, if it's got a fast frame rate. So, and Farsight, we'll do a show on them. They're coming in August. And then they're trying to teach people how to get their own UFO footage. So you just get them all day long. Then nobody can tell you. Everyone knows. Then it becomes a joke. And you're like, just show us. Just give us the tech. In fact, the free energy stuff, we're just going to have to do it ourselves, it looks like. I know somebody knows how to make electron showers. We're going to try and get him on next week as well. That's another long story. I want to talk to him about other stuff. But we'll do the particle stuff. You can do it. You can make electron showers. We can do what CERN are doing. We can all do what CERN are doing. Achieve what they haven't achieved yet for not much money. We can do it ourselves. Let's go figure a way to collect it, which I think a solar panel will do it. But yeah, you'll see. We're going to do some presentations, exciting stuff coming. So we'll see how all of this goes, say going forward. But I just wanted to make sure that, like I said yesterday, doing 1 hour shows, it don't really quite give you enough time to cover things sometimes. So I thought, well, I'll do a follow up the next day straight after, and then we've got, you have to wait too long for it. I wanted to do that announcement about trying to get Roger Spear on next week, and then Courtney Brown, Farsight Institute, early August hopefully. But if not, if something goes wrong, we should be able to, there's plenty of time in August to sort of reschedule. So hopefully that's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one, that is. I'm trying to bring Roger Spear into the sort of troubled minds community, and with not so much just into the station, but just the general conversation, all the listeners and the fans, because we all need to support each other. And Roger Spear's onto some things. Him and Robert Warren have done great work with the physics. Roger Spear's really gone and learnt his material science, and he's hoping to. Well, we're going to have to relearn some of this stuff. And I suppose with these podcast shows, try and educate people how to do it. But I think it might be a good idea to start packaging some of these up like courses, especially when it comes to relearning health and biology, relearning, what we are, how we work, what we're living on at the minute. What is it? I think our situation's up in the air, and we've got to do a bit of a revision of history and how things work, because science is, because it's an accurate lens on doing stuff, but there's people get involved in this. We've been sold down a river with a lot of stuff and tricked with a lot of things. So that's what I'm saying. So hopefully Roger Spear is he's a good teacher, man. He's a bit of a prodigy. So hopefully he'll start doing some teaching courses. We'll be able to package them things up. We'll start getting him on the show, and perhaps get some more guests in going forward. But I'm really looking forward to the Farsight thing. Do some remote viewing, and we'll really get to talk about aliens then. And like I say, some of it's a bit rough. You've got to make your own mind up on what you sort of believe. But there's things start panning out, and themes start coming up over and over again. You have to start thinking, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like, if it's got duck children, and it lays duck eggs. And it's got duck feet and duck feathers. And it lives in a duck pond, and it's got a duck wife. And it quacks like a duck and waddles like a duck. Probably not a goat, right? Probably a duck. The same. But yeah, grow the grass beneath your own feet is going to be our message for the end of this show. And go and check this stuff out. And I keep saying it, but it's because it's important. I mean, you do it does empower you, and eventually it just becomes normal. Where you can just pull it out. Someone tries to tell you not. We need to get a handle on our own reality instead of having people dictate to us what it is. We need to find out for ourselves. I think that's what it's coming down to for me. Because there's a battle for perception going on. You know, and your perception can change everything. You know, a bit like, know your why. If you get your why right, you're laughing, aren't you? If you got your why wrong, it's like, oh my God, this is so horrible. I go to the gym and I'm paying this guy to whip me into shape and I hate him. And it's not really like that. Well, it shouldn't be, should it? That should be a valuable, supporter that you're paying to help you show up for yourself and help you monitor yourself to achieve a goal. You know what I mean? So anyway, enough rambling from me. That's the end of the part 2 of the Aliens and UFOs show and the Exiled Minds podcast. Also broadcasting on Troubled Minds Radio, KUAP, digital broadcasting. Please like and subscribe. Please tell everybody about Troubled Minds Radio. We're trying to build it up while it's in its beginnings. Yeah, working hard in the back. Actually working hard, not just saying it. Actually doing stuff in the background. And the proof will be in the pudding, and you'll know. So anyway, thank you very much. Like, share, subscribe. And yeah, Exiled Minds Podcast. That's enough from me. Possibly bonus content at the weekend, but if not, hopefully back Tuesday with Roger Spur. So take care of yourself. See you then.
And as men busied themselves about their various concerns, they observed and studied the way a man with a microscope might scrutinize the creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacency, men went to and fro about the globe, confident of our empire over this world. Yet, across the gulf of space, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded our planet with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their
I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a summer's I share my reasons with those. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I am. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to heal, my eagerness to fight has set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I share my belief.